I think you're gonna have to wait for a few more people.
Okay,
Hi,
well,
I-
Valerie, Brian? Hi, Bolton Access. Hi, Sharon. Sharon, a fun fact, high altitude contrails by long haul jets are more damaging to the environment than the CO2 they put out. You're muted.
Explain. Explain that.
The water vapor that they put out turns into ice crystals. The ice
Yeah.
crystals become cirrus clouds. The cirrus clouds cause greenhouse effect and significantly affects the local greenhouse effect more than CO2 does.
Ugh,
Not that
Which
CO2
is-
doesn't have a big impact.
Never ask it.
Right, yeah. That means,
That, Sharon.
yeah. Well, I don't actually trust anybody who just says something, right? So I.
Well, this
I
time,
always need an.
Dare I say that MIT said it?
There we go.
That's probably more
Works for
credible
me.
than me.
I
1,
don't
2,
know, I think that
3,
works with
We have
4,
eight right now.
5, 6. I believe we have a quorum.
8 is enough, as the movie would say.
So, shall we get started? The first thing of 2 items on the agenda are the meeting notes from the last meeting that Ken kindly sent out in both the initial draft and modified format. Do I hear a motion?
I move we adopt the modified format.
Okay, is there any discussion thereof? Valerie, are you talking? Oh, okay. Can't hear you. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I
Okay.
thought you were saying something. Okay,
Yes, are we a quorum yet?
I believe we are.
Okay,
1, 2,
8,
4,
8
5,
should be
6.
enough.
We got 6.
Is that true?
Yes,
Yeah, so we have 8 plus.
Okay.
we have 8 plus you.
I thought it would have been 8.
Well, then we'd have to have 17 on the committee.
yeah.
That
Don't we
doesn't-
have 11 on the committee at this point?
I thought we had 15.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Even if it's 15, we have 8.
But in any case, we ought to get the number of people officially
No, we have
appointed.
7.
We have 7, but yeah, I thought that, yeah. I thought that it was
Oh,
officially
you're right,
15.
It's just 7. I thought it was 8, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, just a minute. I have the current list. 1, 2.
Oh, that's right.
can
It's
see.
Bolton Access.
And I don't count. I don't believe.
You count.
Yes, you do.
Two.
I-
You've been officially
I'm
appointed.
a visitor.
No, you're not.
You're a appointed
I'm
member of the
Sorry, you
committee.
cannot get off this committee that easily, Sharon. Don't even try. You're here.
Yeah, there's Kia. We're good.
Okay,
We have 12, not including Chris Rogers, who I believe has formally resigned from the committee.
But even, I think that because the membership is 15, I think it's, I think even if someone resigns, you still hold the 15.
I don't think so.
I believe so.
We've never functioned that way in Bolton. They go by.
But where did the 15 come from?
That's just the list I have. I mean, I think unless was it the planning board that created this subcommittee, this committee, or was it the?
Yeah,
the
but it was
selectmen?
approved by the selectmen approve it.
They would have had to say the membership number.
They don't. They
I
just.
didn't recall that the number was approved.
Oh my
Part of the approval. of the-
Maybe they do it differently.
Yeah,
Well, we're
we've
eight,
got-
eight
we've got
anyhow.
4. We've got 3, 6, 7, 8. So we're.
Okay, we're all set, but
We're
just to
good.
make it straight, I have a list. I will send a list to Pam and copy you, Valerie.
Yeah,
And
just to clarify.
let's make sure that we have an official list.
And also make sure that Madam says it's, how many we have for a quorum.
Okay, so we're all set for a quorum. and nobody's made any comments.
Did we have a second? Because I didn't
I'll
hear it.
second Penny's motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, raise their right hand. Thank you. Any
Aye.
opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And with that, our single real topic is, of course, the forum. So Valerie, I turn it over to you.
All right. So I think we have a couple of different things to talk about tonight. The first would be, well, we could take this up in whichever order you all prefer. But we can talk about our efforts with public outreach, and then we can discuss a little bit more about the interactive stations that we have prepared. And then there may be other things that Bob and Brian that I might be forgetting that we want to discuss tonight. But of those two topics, maybe we could just do the outreach first and
Yep.
share Kia's flyers and banner. I can. Kia, would you prefer to share your screen, or would you like me to pull it up?
I can share the full one. Let's see.
Nice to have you back.
I just got back at 3 o'clock today. Okay. Is that it?
Yep.
So this would be the this is the flyer version. That could also be an email sent out.
I just changed this here, door prizes.
Okay,
Nice.
I just saw that edit, and I can't change the input because that was going to go here. This was the noon to 1. So I'm just going to take this out altogether.
Oh yeah, I think that was for the banner.
Okay, so should I leave it in here?
well, I mean, if people want to socialize, they can. I don't think it adds anything. I think people will come for
Okay.
food trucks and live music.
All right, we'll leave that like that. Let's see if I can find the banner. Oh yeah, here's the banner. And I'm putting door prizes here. And I'm taking this out.
Or you could put public input.
These are really nice, Kia. You did a really
Yep.
nice job.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'll change the aspect ratio.
Thank you.
I was just,
No, that's fine.
actually, this is the aspect ratio I did for the hold the date, which we could use for the Facebook thing.
Okay. And the dimensions of the inside of the town common closed sign are exactly 24 by 72.
Okay, so we'll talk about that later, but yeah.
Could we just
One thing to
briefly?
note about, go ahead, Brian.
Oh,
Brian.
no, go ahead, Sharon. I was just gonna ask her after you're done to go back to the first one for a second.
Just wanted to say that if we're counting on the sign at Bolton Common, note that it is visible only to westward bound drivers. If you are driving eastbound, you cannot read it. So
Right,
that's,
but that's true, but it's also at the light. So I think it's angled, but that's the way the sign is. So we
Yeah, I
count
mean,
on
it's-
people who live there having to go more than one direction.
Yeah, I think you can assume that if someone goes one way, they're probably going to come back the other way.
yeah. We on the outskirts rarely go through the center of town, which is why
Okay, well, we'll have to depend on email for that.
Right. Yeah,
I believe that municipal is misspelled. I think it's PAL.
Yep.
It is.
And then the thing I wanted to ask about is for the parking, has somebody confirmed with Trinity Church?
I okayed it with the library. It's okay with the library.
I spoke with Lisa regarding a number of parking related questions. And she actually has a contact at the church, so she's going to go ahead and reach out to them. She felt like there might be a conflict with the Sunday because they may have a mass. She's finding out what times those masses are. But the Saturday, we should be fine.
Okay.
But she should get an
Thank
okay
you.
from them because they may be running something else.
Exactly.
With respect to parking and logistics, we had talked about possibly having somebody to direct traffic. Anybody got any further thoughts on that?
Is someone going to talk to Bumper about getting an officer?
Well, I know that wasn't it Ed Sterling who said that like they've used volunteers to do it in the past? That was the impression I got.
No,
from
I don't
you.
think he used volunteers for the 117. He used volunteers to sort of direct traffic around, but he used volunteers at the church to help them park at the church, but not on 117. Bumper wouldn't go for that.
When we've done the Christmas thing, we've made, the point was made to us. It wasn't the other way around, that we needed to have somebody official.
Yeah, you need to have an officer.
They don't want anybody other than officers in the highway.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's gonna make that contact?
I'll call Bumper and ask him for someone on, what time do you want someone from 12 to 3, 12 to 4?
earlier
12 to
than that.
3:30. I think there's a 4-hour minimum, isn't there?
I think it probably should be 11:30 to 3:30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
11:30 to 3:30?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that gives us the
I'll
4-hour
ask
minimum.
for one person to direct traffic at the light.
Yeah.
And we'll have to pay him.
Yeah. But seekers of ice, I mean,
Yeah, no, I will. No, I'll call Bumper on Monday. Okay, I can handle that. Easy, easy. Okay, consider it done.
I'm going to stop the share. Okay.
Looks
Okay.
great, Kia.
it looks very good. Yeah,
They look really nice, Kia.
terrific job. And Kia, I copied you on an email as far as sourcing the banner.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all
I'm
set.
a little hesitant here. Is there anything else we should discuss before jumping into the visualization side of the presentation? Mary?
Are the slides part of the visualization?
No, we don't yet have a draft presentation. So this would just be that second half of the,
Okay, so we're not talking about that tonight. Okay.
yeah. We'll-
Valerie, have you gotten input from people yet?
Yes, yeah. I've heard from a number of groups, including housing and climate change. So
Okay, good.
it's clear that people are working pretty hard on it. So yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary?
Public outreach. So Valerie, we were asked to check off a list of stakeholders to invite to this. And so I'm wondering at what point do we invite them and what can we use the brochure or the flyer that Kia just showed or
Yes, yeah.
Are you, Mary, are you referring to the list that you signed up for people to call?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go on. Go ahead, Valerie.
That was my question too. Thanks, Mary.
Okay, that's an easy answer. I
Go
will
ahead,
have your
Penny.
list- I will have your assignments by, say, Wednesday of next week.
Okay.
And then Valerie's putting together talking points.
Actually, I am.
Huh?
Theoretically, I was assigned that responsibility.
All right, well then Robert's doing
Not
it.
theoretically.
All right, then Robert's doing it. So you will
Yes.
get an email with your list of people, their phone numbers, the best I can do for phone numbers and what they're associated with, and then the talking points. And then hopefully when you talk to them, if they agree to come or agree to talk to somebody else, you can get their emails because I don't have a lot of their home emails.
Okay. I mean, the people I checked off, I mean, basically, I know all these groups.
Yeah,
But
so,
I will say we're almost a month away, so it's.
Yep, it's
yeah,
getting
but
close.
I think follow up, the idea is to call them, go through the talking points, hopefully get a yes, and then send them an email confirming, and then we will do that. We should do that again. Send a reminder email in, a week before or something.
Okay, so look forward
that
to
make
your email.
Does that
Yes,
make sense?
exactly.
Is there
And-
other
Yeah,
things
it's
you think-
fine.
Stassi, is there other things we should put on there?
Nope, that was my question. I just want to make sure I hadn't missed this, that we were
No,
supposed to be
no,
doing it
I have
already.
lists. I'm gonna make your lists up.
Okay, and
you.
I'm remiss on the elevator speech. I'll get that out tomorrow. Run it by a couple of people before it goes any further.
And I can also share the flyer as well, so that when you know, if you need other talking points or if you want to email it, and right after your phone call, that you'll have that available.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, one other detail, pretty important. If you talk to somebody and they say that they are not currently the right person to talk to for that particular stakeholder group, if you can update that list so that we have a standing list that's accurate.
And then call them,
Yeah, right, of course. But that's a pretty valuable list.
Is there any sense in trying to get on the Zoom for a meeting to talk to, I don't know, a group instead of one person at a time?
So I think that's going to be, when I'm talking to the planning board about it, that would be at a planning board meeting. We've also looked at on July 8th, there's a Board of Selectmen meeting. So that would be another opportunity to kind of make a brief announcement at that point. And if there are other, boards and committees, I think that those meetings are definitely appropriate. So I would contact staff or the chair of that committee to see if it's appropriate. Yeah, was that about what you were thinking, Sharon?
Yeah.
One other thing that was brought up in the outreach and communication meeting was the possibility of having a combined feature on Bolton Access TV, one of which would be the flyer and the detailed information. But in addition to that, to make it much more human and personable and personal, have an interview with somebody like Brian.
or Brian.
You up for that, Brian?
Brian.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Would you be amenable to that?
Sure.
You're so charming, Brian.
Your agent just spoke. Okay. So we'll coordinate that with Nikki. Nikki, hopefully you're hearing this. Okay.
What are the three compelling points to be made to entice people to come to the Common in the middle of July on a weekend?
That's what Bob's gonna come up with. You're talking.
That's right.
Ah,
Mostly it's your
okay.
future. It's your
But
future, your kids'
We're
future.
gonna make it a little more than just your future.
Well, I think it's a good question though. Like maybe we could just take a minute. Like Sharon, if you have some thoughts or anybody else has some thoughts, maybe we could just share them and then Bob can incorporate them. Because we all
That'd be
might have
great.
some good ideas about what would be a point that draws folks out to this event.
I would think it would have to be somewhat more specific. I think most people in town have never read our master plan or anybody's master plan and don't have a clue. And some who have read some and question what significant effect that they have had might also need to be reminded of that. So if if we could pick something that was a critical part of a recent master plan or any master plan for Bolton that made a difference when it was enacted or acted upon, or things that we're talking about. It can't just be we've been working hard, come hear our work, or we've been working hard, we're almost done, now we're asking you. Right? That doesn't.
No, we've
sound-
just started.
I'm-
Don't,
Yeah.
don't get ahead of us.
It's really about
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
I think we gotta
But no,
turn around. Really
yeah,
reaching out to people and saying, we're looking at what you want Bolton to be in the next 5 to 10 years, and we need you to think about it. And we
Yeah.
need your input. It's not about a plan. It's not about the master plan. It's, it's really a much bigger, broader. And it's about what they see as the future in Bolton.
I'd
Well,
say, oh,
I think we need to emphasize the track record that the master plan has had. 2006 master plan made significant recommendations, which were in fact implemented, and they were big recommendations. And so we can, somehow condense that and make that point very clearly that master planning is valuable. It has been effective. The 2006 plan was effective, very effective, and now we're moving forward to gain a better perspective of the town's thoughts about moving forward.
yeah. And I think, but it has to be more specific than that, Bob. So it has to be what the thingies were, not just.
Oh,
we did
yeah. I
something.
mean, we can talk about
Yeah.
the public safety building, a number of things that came out of that. We'll just go through the implementation matrix and pick out. I wouldn't go more than the top three. I mean, this needs to be an elevator speech. We don't want the doors to remain shut while we give the rest of the speech.
Also that they represent a group in town, whether it's seniors or soccer players or whoever it is. And that we need that group's perspective of what their needs are going forward, going into the future. So it's really important if they can't come, that someone within their group who's familiar with their needs and their aspirations and everything else come and share those.
Which means
Too,
that
that
we
if
need
it's-
we need to invite Catherine Fowl specifically, because with Neshoba Neighbors, she has her finger on the fact that what's our percentage of seniors in this town
I
now?
mean, the
20?
COA's got the seniors, but Catherine's coming, not to worry.
Yeah,
Catherine's
Sharon, she's on my group. I'm on the
Yeah,
board.
Catherine's on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
The council.
Okay, but let's not get into the details
No,
of who we're
no.
inviting. So what I've heard is we want to give them an idea of what the master plan is all about. We want to emphasize the value of the master plan by its track record in 2006 and the significant key things that have been done as a result. And we want to solicit representation from various groups to develop their perspective in the master plan. Others?
Bob, so there may be a couple just kind of key words. I was thinking education, because a lot of folks, I think, the buzz on Facebook and whatnot is that people want to get involved and maybe don't know the right place to get involved. And while this is not a forum for, hey, come and join a committee, it would, I think part of the presentation, if I'm understanding correctly, is going to be presenting, chunks of information in all of these different faucets. So, what people will get out of this certainly is an education, a kind of a high level education, but an education on the functionality of the town and the pieces of it, if you will, and that may be desirable for them to know if they're trying to jump in. And the other thing I would say that people will get out of this is empowerment. Penny spoke to that a little bit. You're representing a group of people. You're you your perspective is powerful, and this is your place, and this is kind of that call to get it out there. So that would be my 2 cents.
Good. I think,
Good point.
input and empowerment are two good words here.
Yeah, good point, Chef Sasha.
I love
Anything
the
else?
charrette I love the charrette for the common. I thought I had the possibility, I had the best ideas and the possibility for some input on that. So I think perhaps presenting some of the challenges, that people might be fairly comfy with the town right now. What are the challenges in the next 10 years? We're trying to take a look at that. We need your ideas. And we can present some of the challenges, perhaps. Because we have to motivate them. It's not just something to do instead of something else. This is important. So these are just ideas.
Okay, so specific covers the waterfront with the points that we've taken. Concise and inspirational. We'll work on all of it.
I guess just the last thing I might add that you could consider is just pointing out that it's kind of rare to have this opportunity. Like these opportunities to have input into the master plan only come around every 15 or so years. So people should be aware of that.
Good.
I think it's a good idea if, I mean, the thing I just showed is the invitation. And so, it might be good to, because we need more stuff to put up on Facebook anyway, that it might be good to have a follow-up with some of the stuff you've just talked about, challenges, why come, why we need you, or something like that. I mean, it would be good to have a second email go out with a different attachment, or, something that would address more of those other things.
Yeah, I think so.
But as for, getting people to come, we can't really disguise the fact that it is a working session. It is, like Brian said, it's a rare opportunity. And if you care, you will make an effort to get there. I mean, the food trucks and the music and the door prizes are just candy. But, I don't know if we're going to have hordes of people that, the police may be hanging around just directing not that much traffic, but we have to count on the fact that people who really care and want to learn more about the town and want to contribute to the town will come. And I don't know how much we should advertise the fact that this is really only the first one, because if we say that too much, people might just say, oh, well, I'll catch the next one. But it might be good if we say this is the preliminary one, where your input will be used.
That makes it sound like the second one isn't one where we use their input.
Well,
Because of the way she said it
the
is funny.
second one, though, will be more like the ones in Needham, which is to validate what we've discovered. So it's true, if a whole bunch of people who don't come and don't agree with our goals show up at the second one, well, then we have a problem and we have to repeat a grade. But, I doubt that will happen, really.
The other thing is when you call someone up and they want to come, ask them if there's someone else in their group who would like to come too. And either
Yeah.
get their name and call them, or have them call them and have them come. We don't need just one person from the group. Right now, you've got one contact for most of the groups, but the groups are bigger than one person. So more people from the group who want to come, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed that's what was the reason for calling the point of contact is to try to get more people from that group to come.
Yeah, that's very specifically the reason.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think. You know, don't be shy.
But with the charrette for the town common, that's how it worked, if you recall. People went back and talked to their group and got the group's perspective and then represented, in most cases, what the group was thinking.
Just put
I'm
the word
suddenly
Okay.
thinking, do we need childcare?
No,
Do we
they're
need
coming out
somebody
of
to
the
play
common.
with the kids at the common? No?
I'm actually going to disagree with Ken and say that if you have childcare, you will get a lot of people to come, younger
Man,
people.
I think it
Hmm.
confuses the whole thing.
Why?
You think having someone there to watch the children so the parents can be focused confuses the whole thing?
I think the parents can find someone to watch the children while they attend this. That's more my.
Well, I mean, that's
And I know
fine.
I'm an older person, but back in the day, that's what I would have done.
You guys were looking to get more people. I'm providing an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
So
then you're
Molly,
eliminating a lot.
can I ask you a question, Molly? How would that play out, right? If and because I hear you, and having children, I'm gonna just try to weigh in here. Are you thinking like one person or like a group of teenagers, and then, where do they go that's safe on the common, that's away from the distraction of their parents, or like at town meeting it makes sense, I think, more so because there's a separate gym for them, like they know their space. But here they're going to have like mom and dad under a pavilion, there's going to be busy 117, and then there's going to be, I would feel like you would need a lot of people if people show up with a lot of kids, then you would need a lot of people to watch those children in
Not
that
disagreeing.
environment.
You
Like,
made the suggestion. I said, if you want to have more people there, I would say, yeah, have babysitters, but
no, I agree with you, but I'm just trying, I'm trying to be pragmatic about the solution. Like, do you know of a group of kids or babysitters that would, because I think you would need a group.
oh, you absolutely would. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're on the Bolton Moms group too. I mean, you throw it out there, there's like 10 moms with 10 teenage girls who'd love to do it. But it's going to cost money and it's a liability, and I'm not sure about insurance, but I'm just saying, yes, Mary, people should hire their own babysitters, but if you want people to show up and make it more of a social thing, then provide childcare. I would personally put them around that semicircle thing
You
that
mean,
is in the back left. but
Yeah,
I'm
it's the safest
sure
point.
using that.
Mhm.
I
mean,
wonder if you could hire a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout to literally take the medium older kids over to the playground. The other playground, the playgrounds whichever one people like.
Mm.
I mean,
that's a long way though.
Yeah. There's a group in the high school of I don't remember what they're called, but they are a service group.
There's a
Uh,
National
and-
Honor Society service group and they've done a lot of
and-
things.
And
Web-
I can see them in that little area, and also running up the hill and rolling down the hill again. Or just running up the hill and running back down the hill. But yeah, I think a group of kids do it.
but if
I-
they're doing that, are their parents paying attention to a rather dry slideshow compared
I
to
know
their kids?
I would not
Yeah.
be comfortable leaving my child with a group of adolescents or whatever you come up with that I don't know. And I don't know what they're going to do with them. I mean, it just would create a difficult, I think, situation for the parents if their child were.
What if we said it was child friendly in the sense that, you can bring your children, and maybe parents would, Molly, to your point, would pool, like parents from the moms group that know each other might say, hey, because they know each other, they could say, hey, we're going to go do this thing. Is your teenage daughter available to watch, these 5, whatever, like they would clump and group so that they would be with somebody that they know, and they would know that they're welcome to be at the common. It's not like an adult only thing, right? But it doesn't put the onus on us as a group to incur the liability. It's a more informal, among the parents that know each other and are comfortable with each other's teenage child caregivers.
Yeah.
I think that child-friendly marketing idea is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Town
think we've got to be
common, for
very
Pete's sake.
careful about, you know, when you take a look at all the parts of putting this thing together, I think we've got more than we can handle right now without getting into childcare. I mean, this is, we've got the facilitator issue. We've got a whole bunch of things that need to get resolved. And I would prefer to stay simple as we can, so that we do a spectacular job of a reasonably straightforward core message, core engagement approach without trying to solve everybody's problems. And I hear you, Molly, but I think having families get together, as Stasha and Brian have suggested, is probably a pretty good idea. We have done it. We've done it with the trust for the annual meeting, and done it at the church, at the First Parish, out in a little playground. But that's very well contained, and it was, as we referred to it as, monitoring tiny terrorists. It was a bit of a challenge, to say the least. So as much as I think it's a good idea, I think we're spreading ourselves pretty thin. So we can talk about it further if we can get out the message that it is family and child friendly. Bring your kids. That's fine. Just keep in mind that we don't want too much in the way of distractions. But
And the other thing is, because I'm having trouble, I'm so far I've bombed out on getting chairs. I'm still pursuing it. But we, at some point, are going to need to probably suggest, if we can't find any chairs, is to have people bring blankets or something of their own chairs. So, if you have, if Brian brought Christopher, they could sit on a blanket and,
That's a really good idea, Penny. I can tell you 8th grade graduation, and there was another event we're going to, I can't remember what it was, but everybody's saying bring your own chairs, just for cross contamination, for the fact that you don't, like, everybody has their own comfortable chair. I feel like in this COVID world, everybody's got an outdoor chair.
Yeah.
And it saves somebody from having to set them up and take them down and sanitize them and all that.
well, that's true, but it's also finding them. It's an issue finding them these days.
Yeah.
well,
so that might
Patty,
be worth
if you can
adding.
look further, that's great.
All right.
At this point in the pandemic, I don't think sanitizing, based on the input internationally and from the CDC, that it's airborne, not surface-borne. I think probably we need to get realistic about that. I think we polluted more of the atmosphere with trying to solve the surface problem than.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just, all of the things that are being said around, everybody
you guys
seems to be
decided
bringing
that
their own
we
chairs.
should have them bring their own chairs or blankets?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Ah.
they said for town meeting, and some people did that, and it worked fine.
Yeah, Valerie says family friendly. That's good wording.
Okay. Are
I
we
like family
finished?
friendly more than child friendly. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have the elements of the message. I need to spend some time trying to consolidate them. Okay, Valerie, you want to
Sure.
talk a little bit further on?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you all some of these stations that we've been working on. If I can find it. Here we go. Okay. You think I would know how to do this quickly by now? It's been long enough.
Okay, that was
All
quick.
right. So what we have here will be 10 different stations or 10 different areas. And here are the different subjects or concepts, I guess, for the 10 areas. So an introduction map, community aspirations, a wish poem, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, something on transportation and mobility, economic development, neighborhood development, open space, regional planning, and then a discussion around village center. So
You just
Here
moved
is,
that before I could copy.
I'm sorry?
You just moved that before I could take a picture of it.
Oh, I'm
'cause I-
sorry. Here.
I can't
It's
write as
all, it's
fast
kind
as
of on the left as well.
Okay. Oopsie daisy. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So this is a map. I'm sorry, this is so small. How do I make this a little bigger? A map that we had for the town meeting. So essentially just saying, like, where are you coming from today? You can put a sticker where your home is, just to get a sense of the representation that we have and where people are coming from. So maybe we could do more targeted outreach at the upcoming meetings, so we can understand better, you know, what people are, you know, where people might be seeing our messaging a little bit more. And so for this, I'm saying that we'll only need a floating facilitator, so someone who's able to walk around this and other posters to be able to kind of interpret what the map is asking the resident to do. Sometimes people need a few questions answered, or they need help orienting themselves. What I'm going to do here is just kind of go through them all quickly, and then we can, if you have questions about each individual one, we can come back to it. I think that there are quite a few, and I'd like to kind of show you a sense of all of them first. So here are the 8 community aspirations that Brian has drafted. So again, how this one is going to look is likely to be a you know, posters that have each aspiration written out on them next to a bucket of some kind. And we would be providing people that would come up with 3 different poker chips or 3 objects, and they would be able to vote essentially for which aspiration resonates with them the most. And then right next to that, there is going to be another station that's essentially saying, you know, how would you change what you've seen in those aspirations? So, you know, they can add a few more statements here as they may, or they might write, you know, I really didn't like that you use these words, and this is how I would change it. So, you know, we'll have someone there who can also help kind of interpret things and make sure that people know that they're able to provide their edits here. And also that these community aspirations are going to be evolving through the course of our work and evolving through the course of the 4 different public forums that we'll have. So we're always going to be kind of showing how these aspirations change over time. Another one that's pretty light is a wish poem. So I wish Bolton blank. So I wish Bolton had a community pool, or I wish Bolton had a shopping mall. No one's going to say that, but so people essentially come up to this and fill in the rest of that sentence. And we can have a few of these. So it's on a flip chart. So once it's done, once it's completed, we can always flip it over and it just starts anew. It's a more open-ended way of getting people's comments and feedback, so that if they have more big picture ideas that might not fit into the other stations, this is a good way to let them kind of throw their ideas on a board and see what sticks. I've seen this done at other public forums, and people will often come back and write "same here" next to someone else's statement, or they'll put a sticker next to something else to kind of vote for another idea. So you kind of get a sense of what people are hoping for the next 15, 20 years. And it's a good way to kind of start conversation between people as well. So at this station, we'll have a dedicated facilitator here to do a SWOT analysis. And so this is a pretty typical planning style analysis. Maybe you've done something similar in your lines of work as well. So we have some guiding questions here. So what are the strengths of the community? What does Bolton do well? What separates Bolton from other towns? So these are all internal strengths. And then weaknesses is also another internal. So what does Bolton lack? What is Bolton limited by? You know, what do we do not as well as other towns? And opportunities, questions like, you know, what need is Bolton well suited to meet? What outside initiative can Bolton take advantage of? So thinking kind of outside of our town boundaries, how are we connected to the region? And then what are Bolton's threats? So what might be an obstacle to meet our aspirations? What might be an obstacle to those opportunities or those strengths? And I have a few more questions for the facilitator kind of ask if conversation runs a little dry. So I'm assuming there'll be a dedicated facilitator here that will be asking these questions, but we'll also have these questions kind of written into these boxes so that participants can see what we're going for here.
Well, Valerie, will people be filling that in those boxes, writing in those boxes, or will the facilitator be writing in those boxes?
I think this one would be the facilitator writing it in.
No.
So again, here are the questions written out so that people that come up won't need a full explanation from that individual, but just they'll be able to read it and understand what's going on. So again, this topic is very broad. So just looking at, you know, transportation and mobility in terms of, you know, where in town would you like to feel safer on your bicycle? Where in town would you like to have a crosswalk? So having different stickers for different types of transportation options.
Valerie, does it
Yeah.
make a difference if this has already been done before, especially with the
Complete
complete
Streets.
streets
Yep.
and mobility committee before that? We had a mapping session and a survey. So I almost feel like been there, done that with this, but
Okay.
again, you've got a new audience and
Yeah,
maybe
I mean,
new perspectives.
to that, I would say we can always do it again, but you know, you're right that I think part of the purpose of doing something like this is to get people to think about how they can change their town. So in the next 20 years, the streetscape in Bolton is going to change. And so people who might not have lived in town during those processes, people who might not be familiar with a master plan, they might be able to see this and say like, okay, this plan is going to talk about how we are connected to other areas of town, or how we get to Harvard, or how do we get to Clinton. So for me, it's a bit of a way to include those planning processes, kind of link them to this process. But I think, so you're raising a good point too, though, that, you know, it might be worth me talking to you and looking more at what was done before, because maybe you have a question that you'd like to ask that kind of builds off of what we already know. So we can talk further about that, because yeah, maybe maybe there was a survey that was asked with the Complete Streets plan, and there is a question that didn't get fully fleshed out, and maybe this is an opportunity to kind of dive a little deeper into it. So that's a good point.
Thanks.
And then this one is just a blank flip chart, just for other ideas and questions, because again, this map that we're using doesn't have other towns in here. I don't have the commuter rail stations on here. Someone might want to say something that I am not thinking about, and it's not an available option through this map. So just to have another blank chart there that they can add their ideas.
Can I
Is that
just step
the
back
same
for a
station?
second on that, on transportation? Mary, I understand that they're have been surveys and there has been discussions of complete streets, but has there been discussion about a regional approach or what other towns are doing or to what we are connected and how to change our modes of transportation?
It's mostly just been focused on within Bolton. As far as non-motorized mobility. We're not talking about commuter options.
So I think, maybe that's something we need to think about. It's been focused on complete streets and pedestrians. There's a lot more to transportation in Bolton and regionally, and maybe we need to develop something that solicits that kind of input and
Yeah.
lets people think a little bit more broadly.
One
This
of
would be,
the,
go ahead.
sorry, Bob. One of the things I was thinking about mapping, and this is not my thing, mapping, but if we could show the roads that have posted speed limits in town, because this is a big issue for people is they don't quite grasp the unposted versus posted speed limits in town. And if that could be indicated on the map, that would be good. And also the different types of roads in Bolton,
Mhm.
major
Yep.
roads and, 117 being a minor arterial. If we could, identify what the different road types of roads there are, and then which roads have posted speed limits and which don't.
Yep. Yeah, I know that I have the layer with types of roadways. I'm still getting myself used to our GIS system and the layers that we have. I'm familiar with GIS, but it's always difficult to inherit someone else's system. So I'll look for the posted speed limit layer. I can also ask, I'm sure there's someone on the Public Ways Safety Committee that would be able to direct me.
That,
to-
or we can
yeah.
check with the police department and
Yeah.
DPW. But Bob, getting back to connecting with other towns, other than back when the mobility committee was researching, we looked at other towns in terms of, how they funded sidewalks, what their policy was for snow clearing, that sort of thing. But as far as connecting into other towns via bike paths or walkways, no.
Well, I'm also thinking of innovative approaches to multimodal transportation,
Right.
getting back, and, maybe it's just my parochial perspective, having been a commuter for 40 years. That's really, really important. And there's an awful lot of traffic that goes through Bolton and in and out of Bolton that I think could be changed somewhat by having multimodal transportation and thinking more regionally.
And that's something we're looking at. Yeah, definitely.
So how do we solicit that kind of input?
The,
Mary,
the survey wasn't real promising in that regard, but at the same time, I think that that doesn't mean we shouldn't address it.
I think you have an opportunity here of
Yeah.
taking people who are interested in a broad range of things and having part of our discussion be transportation and mobility, instead of having people who are focused on transportation and mobility, looking at transportation and mobility, just, a broader spectrum.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's worth thinking through to see if we can think more specific, as Kia suggested in her chat, and also take a look at a broader perspective in terms of a regional perspective. And I'm sure MAPC and Magic would be willing to give us some thoughts on that pretty quickly.
Do
we
do we
have a
want
transportation
pay-
map now, Mary?
oh, excuse me, Ken, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just wondered if we have a transportation map now that's come out of either of the surveys or of the work that Public Ways had done, because you could take what you were talking about of speed limits and add some other things. You could put the various traffic signals that are there and other things of that sort, and maybe even put some of the results of some of the, what people consider to be the problem intersections or whatever on there. But I don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely add kind of some call out maps that have more specifically posted speed limits, locations of sidewalks, types of roads. But then if we're still asking, if the guiding questions are remaining the same, I might still leave the large scale map, which is intentionally quite blank, so that we're not making it too busy,
Yeah,
so
that
that
makes
people
sense.
can put their stickers on there and understand where they are. But I can definitely do some call out maps. Yeah, I'm gonna keep moving through. Feel free to bring me back to transportation a little bit later. So I do have more transportation apparently. So one thing that I'm interested in as a planner is, and as someone who's new to Bolton, is what types of improvements or what types of design do residents want when we do make streetscape improvements? So these things like sidewalks, bike lanes, signage can all look very different. And so I'm interested to see more about, what residents typically do like, so that when I am writing an RFP or trying to get a contractor to do a complete streets project, I'm clear on, on what the feedback from the town might be from the get-go before a public process. So
Can you scroll down so we can see?
yes, I was just
Yeah.
I was trying to orient.
Yeah.
So I just put up a couple different examples of sidewalks. Everything from the very urban feel of what a sidewalk along 117 kind of can feel like at times, to something more like one of those winding paths that a town like Lincoln or Lexington might have. And the idea here is that this blank space next to each of these provides a space for people to vote with stickers for what they prefer. Same thing with what a bicycle facility should look like. So should it be a shared use path? Should there be mountain bike trails, bike lanes, sharrows, separated bike lanes? Parking, thinking a little bit about parking, on street, in front of businesses, behind businesses. I have not finished this one, so I'm going to be adding additional photos to this for trails, for signage, for what a shuttle stop might be able to look like in the future.
In terms let me just ask a question here, Mary. In terms of the survey, my recollection was that there were something like 6 or 9 people who said that they would be willing to take a shuttle. Is that the number? It was.
I
a
don't,
small number.
I mean, I don't have the numbers offhand. It was, to me, discouraging the responses for commuting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
3 people carpool, I think, something like that.
Well,
Unbelievable.
perhaps there's another way to ask the question. So I don't know how the question is framed, but a lot of it might be what the shuttle looks like. Is it in fact just a car? Is it an Uber or a Lyft? Or, is it a small school bus, or is it a COA MART van? Also, we could ask a little bit more about where the shuttle is going and how far it's going to go. So is it just a quick shuttle to Highland Commons, or is it a shuttle to the commuter rail at key times? So there are some other questions, and also, it's another opportunity to ask a wider audience.
yeah, and you can also do a little twist, for example, shuttles to the commuter rails. You can play on the fact that there's very limited parking, which is why a shuttle would be an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Okay, so moving on to economic development. So not that I'm about to change a lot of zoning here, but The idea of, where do you want businesses to be located? When I first, as someone who's new to Bolton, it does seem like businesses are quite scattered. And so one question I would like to learn more about from residents is scattered a good option for small town business? Would we rather have a little more density in some locations, or would we like to expand an overlay? Economic development is one area where I really like to hear a lot more from people about what the vision is. So first off, just being able to point on a map, where would you want businesses to be? If all of the businesses in Bolton burned down, where would you put them back up? Sorry, I didn't hear that, Bob.
Hudson.
No, I think one of the things that, two things that are closely related, that's economic development and transportation. And I think judging by the feedback that we got in our initial economic development discussions with town businesses was the contradictory perspective that there's too much traffic on 117 and we need more retail on 117. So, oh, really?
Yeah.
So
right.
I think we need to think that through very carefully. And probably had we realized that we would have a transportation east-west corridor running through the middle of Bolton, we would have had a very different perspective on business development, economic development in the town. But we're where we are, and maybe we can change. I don't know.
Valerie, one point on this map, and I don't know how you would be using it, but that thing that looks like a shark down on the lower part is what used to be Camp Virginia, and that's not a business. She may be running it as an allowed business, but it's residentially zoned land, and so you don't want to misrepresent that whole parcel, including the buildable lots on Long Hill Road, are business land, because it isn't true.
Yes, this is another example of how difficult GIS has been so far. So I have not been able to locate the zoning layer, which should be very easy to find. So I instead, for this one, as a placeholder, just used our zoning map.
That's fine. It's easy to change, but that's just something that leaked out at me.
Yes, right. So this map should only be showing, it shouldn't be showing, the golf course. It shouldn't be showing, a lot of this, but it'll be more impactful to just only highlight the actual business and limited business areas, and perhaps the industrial area as well.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. All right. And I'm realizing now that some of these questions are quite small, so I understand you might not be able to read either. Actually, Kia, where in the inset? What's wrong here?
I believe the business zone at 495 does include the three little buildings to the east of the Bolton Office Park. And I think that the business zone have in the top right is only the Skinner property. No, and the inset. I'm talking about the inset. So the inset doesn't have Slater's in there.
So the inset is actually, and you can't read this, but it's just the mixed use village overlay.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so see, this is why I need to find that zoning layer.
I don't think Skinner is mixed use, is it?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, which one's the Skinner? The Skinner
the
is
top right.
Yeah, that one.
Yes,
I believe that one is.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think it was either, but it's worth looking at.
And I do think the three little properties to the east of the office park are. meaning the Clinton Savings Bank, the
here.
vet, and the other property that's for sale. Right in there, yes.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think they're
That's-
all zone business, like you're right, Kia.
And I think
Well,
the
they are in the
Colonial
business district.
Candies is also in the overlay.
Okay, this is a zoning problem that I need to figure out immediately. This, it sounds like it's kind of the opposite of what you're seeing. So,
Well, I think the main map does have Colonial Candies in there. And it does. I mean, you know what? Let's work on it later.
yeah, I'll come back to it, but that's quite concerning to me that that I don't have a proper map. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. So these questions are just pretty simple survey. This could be a handout or it could be a flip chart. The difference between the two for me is if we want participants to see each other's answers. But it could also be both. We could do this in an 8.5 by 11, or we could have it as a large flip chart. So questions like how many times a week do you purchase an item in Bolton? What establishment have you visited in Bolton in the last month? What other towns do you go to for shopping and dining? What are your top restaurants? What are your favorite village centers to go to? What do you like about them? Under normal circumstances, how many times a week do you go out to eat? And then rating your satisfaction with the following in Bolton. So restaurants, retail options, civic space, appearance, bicycle and pedestrian accommodation, public art, business signage versus wayfinding or directional signage, ability to find parking, ease of access, and the availability of information about businesses in town. And then a question of what types of businesses do you want to see in Bolton? So that's all I had for economic development. I just wanted to, again, keep it pretty simple. And then I have neighborhood development, so another kind of visual preference survey. I'll scroll down, but just as a preface to this, just as an interest of mine is, again, if the planning board or the housing trust got site control over a piece of property and we are going to put housing down, what type of housing would the town want us to install? So, you know, what type of housing, what's the look of housing that you like best? So, you know, the trend of tiny homes, but also, you know, detached accessory apartments. If there's an interest for multifamily housing, an interest of single family homes. And then again, haven't finished this, but would add some ideas of what cottage developments look like. So these are typically homes that are around 1,200 square feet, so smaller starter homes. And cluster development, so kind of allowing a little bit more density while preserving open space. Continuum of care housing, so we have a lot of aging adults in town, so thinking about different intensities of care that we can provide at a single site. Townhomes. And then mixed use, which can be residences and businesses in the same building, but also residences and businesses on the same site. So just thinking about, you know, what do you want new development to look like if it were to come? And then, you know, again, you know, the housing production plan was just completed. And they obviously had robust, you know, work that they were doing around, you know, what are the housing conditions in Bolton? So kind of adding on to that a little bit, you know, what are your top 3 concerns related to housing? Just to get a sense of what that might be, because I hear a lot pretty vague or pretty broad terms, and I'd like to break it down. So I have a whole long list of of what concerns around housing could be. So design, density, integration, town services, sprawl, different options, preserving open space, increased traffic, parking, sustainable building practices, and low impact development. So again, a large scale map or large scale flip chart that people can vote for their top 3 concerns. And then again, so neighborhood development, what housing tools or strategies would you support? And you know, these are all either from the housing production plan or from you know, other planning knowledge and resources.
Some of these terms you have to explain.
Yep.
You can't just put them there.
Yep. And so I'm also hoping that there would be a facilitator here. So I can add some definitions, but also have someone standing by who's able to say what transfer of development rights means. So
I'm not sure I like that you're putting the CPA in within the housing, because we don't want to equate CPA with housing only. And I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that we will probably at some point be going to do a CPA campaign, but I think by putting it right there up front, you risk sort of contaminating it as a primarily a housing tool, which is not what it is.
It's because it's recreation and open space.
It's interesting because
It's
I saw it,
historic,
I
it's
saw it as
cultural.
sneaking it in.
You were sneaking it in?
No, I viewed it, when I saw it there, I thought, oh, this is a good thing they're talking about, that they kind of snuck into the discussion of housing. So I didn't see it as a negative.
Well, at
Which is
least
what's
put it at the
interesting.
bottom then.
I can mix it in. I mean, the truth is that CPA is a way to increase affordable housing.
Oh, I know, it's great.
So-
And it's just that it has many different aspects to it. And if
Yeah.
you're not putting it in other places too, I mean, maybe that's the thing, is you need to put it in other places.
I think that's a good point, Kia. It belongs in in other places, but I think it does belong here, especially with everything going on in Stowe and the recent funds that they just put towards buying conservation restrictions, I think, on some land, and in the midst of their development. I mean, if people are reading the papers, they're seeing this term and they're understanding that those funds are being used for things related to housing in towns close to us.
Yeah.
They are, but Stowe, keep in mind, Stowe was one of the first places to pass it. They get millions
have a
and
lot.
millions of dollars. And all of their people are very familiar with it. I think I would propose that 90% of the people in Bolton don't know anything about CPA.
I agree with Kia.
And so I don't want it to be, you know, for those people out there who are not friendly to housing, we don't, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm
No, that's a good
paranoid.
point.
No, I get your point. I mean, if you look at the draft action plans that Brian created, and if you look at the line for CPA, almost all the task groups have checked it off. So it's pretty much applies across the board. And so, you know, to just point it out for housing and not anything else.
Sounds
Makes
like
it-
lobbying.
Yeah. Well, no.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And in Astacia, you're correct that Stowe uses a lot of their CPA money for housing.
But maybe it belongs somewhere else or should be scattered throughout other slides
yeah.
as well. I hear you.
So it's difficult because I don't have a space for historic preservation, and I don't have strategies or tools, as I'm not sure how to integrate it with parks and open space, parks and
Oh yeah, you
recreation
can.
and-
Yeah,
and-
conservation. I mean, sidewalks are allowed under CPA. I mean, if they connect to things like
they-
parks or trails or whatever, absolutely.
Well, I can think about ways of incorporating it into other places.
Really,
think-
tax relief. I mean, CPA is mostly, I think, is tax relief because even though you're paying a little bit up front, it's like a 401k. I think it should be, are we doing any aspiration on what? Lowering our taxes?
But nobody
Well-
views it as that.
I know, but that's what we will be having to
I agree.
sell
Yeah,
sell it
I think you're,
by,
I think that's a very interesting way to sell it, but that has not been, for those who are opposed, which is half the voters so far, or enough to defeat it, they certainly have not viewed it as tax relief. They view it as exactly the opposite.
Right.
I don't mean tax relief, I mean a new source of revenue. I mean, when we talk about the graph, of where our revenue comes
Yeah,
from.
yeah, I agree.
Do we have any, I mean, I don't mean to interrupt
Well,
this, but
Yeah,
are
we
we?
should let her finish
Yeah,
all the
yeah, let's
slides and
finish.
see.
Yeah, because I'm
because
wondering if it
CPA
doesn't,
Maybe in other places too.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
an
think-
open space, like, or something. Yeah, keep going about.
Yeah, I
If you
don't,
put it here, you
I,
gotta put it in open space.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
I'll say that I don't want to hide it, and I don't want to remove it because I do think it is a valuable housing strategy, and I think that if people haven't heard of it, this is a great time to talk about it, and if people don't like it, it's a great time to tell me that. I think this is a huge opportunity to voice opinions and to be able to say what you're for, what you're worried about. Perhaps there is a flyer I can find that someone else has made about CPA that you can have like folded up next to this station to provide people with more information about what CPA is. So that they know it's not just housing, or it doesn't have to be housing at all.
Well, can't you just
but-
reword it here, Valerie? Leave it here,
Um,
but put it in the context of Community Preservation Act funding in part for housing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that. I can define it a little bit. I can say that.
Actually,
Yeah.
why don't you say, using Community Preservation Act funding, implying
that's
that
fine.
we've already passed it, so that, I mean, if people support using the funding for that, it means they support it. And once they find out we haven't passed it, that will be another way to make it more obvious that they should pass it.
Okay.
I think if we can do anything to emphasize its advantages, because we've lost twice, and I was part of the campaign, at least in one of them. As Ken said, in Bolton, CPA is viewed as an additional tax, quote unquote,
Mhm.
and they won.
And they don't care what it's for. They just don't want to pay the tax.
Yep. All right.
Good.
And there are other ones that I'll probably also have to define a little better. Increasing inclusionary zoning percentage. I know that's coded words. I'll have to find a way of briefly describing that or ensuring that there's a facilitator who's able to talk about what that would mean. And these other things as well. So
Try to clarify there and not lean on the facilitator because somebody might pass over it because it's not being talked about at that moment.
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. So I'll have to, one thing I have not done is speak with Rebecca regarding what types of open space and rec questions she might still have after doing the open space and rec plan in 2018. So I just threw up a few questions here. Just to think about where people go. I might have a map that shows all the open space in town and say, what's your favorite trail? Which one do you like to go to most?
I, and are you satisfied with Bolton's current recreational amenities? That sort of, to me, begs the question of, well, what other ones would you like if you aren't? And I think we need to be positive about that. And are there others?
There are others. Playgrounds.
Yeah, I understand that we don't have any wheelchair accessible trails or handicap.
Right, so an
accessible
ADA
trails.
path. Yep,
Yeah.
That's correct.
yep.
No, that's not true. We have one around the town common.
Yes.
I know for a fact because I permitted it.
Okay.
That's true.
All right.
It's not a trail.
And lastly, I have a placeholder for MAPC. So I'm discussing with you know, what kind of thing they could put here if they were to add something to this. So I'm hoping that this could be another good visual about a regional need. But they also may come back to me and say that they would rather hang out at the housing station and talk about the incredible pressure that the whole state is under regarding housing. So this part of it still needs a little bit of work.
Well,
but thank you all for being
it's-
so patient with me with all of this. Those are the slides or the posters that I've come up with, and I think that these 10 stations are probably what we're going to have, even though I can continue, you know, working on the specific comments and questions that you shared.
So
What is number 10?
Valerie, I have a question about number 10, Bolton's Village Center.
what
What
is
is
it?
that all
Oh.
about?
I'm sorry, did I actually skip that one?
No,
No.
I think
it
I
wasn't,
did.
yeah, we didn't see it, but
It's the last
I'm sorry.
one,
I
just-
wasn't
actually,
it?
thank you. I did skip it. I thought that was the end.
there we
Um,
are. So
Thank you, Mary.
you got a feel of where I'm at when I attended the EDC meeting on
Mhm.
Monday night. So I'm just really concerned of creating a fantasy vision of, first of all, what do you mean by a village center? And I know this is the question, but it obviously is going to gravitate towards the town center, which is the National Historic District. It's a heritage landscape. It is very vulnerable, and it's a residential community. And I just don't want conversations to revolve around some fantasy of cute little shops, tea shops, and things like that in the town center.
So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say two things to that because I had hoped this conversation would go in a little differently the other night. So I think for me, what's interesting about having these questions out here is because I can get a sense of if half the people might want something that is much more of a commercial area that might belong closer to 495, right? Or, you know, on the other hand, thinking about how I as a planner use the master plan, you know, when you're going for grants, you have to say whether the goal of the grant or the project that you're proposing is directly related to another plan, particularly the master plan. So I'm thinking if there's something in the master plan that is able to get the town site control over a property in Village Center, let's say, around the town commons, would the town be able to purchase and renovate a historic home? Would the town be able to acquire a vacant parcel? And what, you know, if we did acquire a vacant parcel in by the town commons, would we want to put up a small home? Would we want would we want town offices there? Not necessarily businesses, but you know, if there were an opportunity for something else there, would it be added civic space? Would it be would it be more parking, or would it, something else? So I'm wondering, if the opportunity for site control comes along, what does the town want to do?
I think you should put these three questions as you have it here, to me, assume that people are voting for economic activity. So I think if you
Okay.
work some of these questions about an economic village center into the economic slide, you could better get a grip for what people want in a economic center. If you want to talk about the historic center, even for what you just said, the site control, you need to call it the historic center so that everyone knows you're talking about Wattaquadock, Maine, and the area, between X and Y. And you need to show what where the historic center is. And it's just real. I agree with Mary. Using the word village center is just, people will assume you're talking about the economic development in the historic center. Whether you want that or not, that's what they're going to think. So
Okay.
you get it all mixed up because, I'm all for an economic center, but as you know, I'm for putting it across from the high school. And I also think that a lot of people have a lot of ideas about this neighborhood in the center of Bolton. And it's getting more and more passionate than the yays and the nays. So at some point we have to deal with that issue because so many people expect this to be something in their dreams. Well, we have to address that. And this is, just don't use the word village center, use economic center or historic center. And if you want them to be one and the same, that's good. We want to get those votes, but it's very misleading.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are really three centers, and we're talking about an historic center. We're talking about potentially a municipal center that may include a community center. And we're also talking about, for all intents and purposes, a retail commercial center. So we're talking about three different things, which may very well overlap with an overlay or an intersection on, a geographic basis. But I think we need to ask the very specific question. What do you mean by a center?
Could I offer my perspective as somebody who moved here relatively recently? So when we were looking at our house, we drove through Bolton and we didn't have any of the history of knowing what different things were called. But just as like a first-time visitor, if you asked me where is the center of Bolton and what happens there, I would have said the center of Bolton is like roughly from where the church is, the Catholic Church, to 495. Like in my mind, the center was from there, like the library, the common, all the way down to where the Bolton Bean and Clinton Savings Bank were. That was in my head, that was the center. And that includes a mix of residential and business uses. So I think it is worth like, I'm not so sure that everybody in town is going to have the strong associations that you all are having with words like historic center, economic center, village center. I think people are going to think about it in very different ways. And part of what we're trying to do is get them to tell us in their words.
But that's a really complicated story because the 2015 events are pretty were pretty raucous, and then the Common campaign is pretty recent, and all of those things I think actually cloud people's answers. We don't have enough distance from those two events. So I think that's our problem, but you know, maybe you're right. Maybe we don't really
s-
know.
I'm gonna
Well, I
stop
mean,
screen
if you
sharing
ask
so
a
we can see your
question, I think you
faces.
have to define terms.
You do.
Well, Sam, we're not.
So one thing I'm thinking here is, I think that there are a few different options. And one is, I think in my opinion, and feel free to disagree, I think the master plan is an opportunity to essentially create a neighborhood plan for the historic center of town. It is also an opportunity to create a plan for the economic center and to look at other areas in town. This committee could choose to take this discussion off of our introductory forum and then simply have another forum that is going far more deep into this question, because it occurs to me that this is probably the largest stumbling block for the master plan. And if the master plan ignores it, we're not doing ourselves any favors in the long run. And this question is going to come to a head and need to get addressed, you know, at some point. The town is going to be in a position where we are having to defend the area without having an actual plan for it. So I do think this is a question we need to suss out. And it could be that this is going to be another charrette that is far more focused on this exact question.
Yeah, I agree, because including economic development in a village center in this first forum without including historical is you're denying historical the chance to defend itself.
Yeah.
But I
I
guess,
totally agree too. I think that's a really good idea, because I don't think you should cloud it, especially if we have new people coming who haven't been part of those two previous campaigns. So it's a good opportunity to sort of test, especially all the economic questions.
Yeah.
We want to find out how much economic activity people want before we give it a space. And, you know, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that eventually the plan has to make recommendations about the center, because there's a lot of vulnerability here, and yet there's a lot of potential here. So, you know, and I personally, as a person who lives here, you know, I was on hold for many years thinking, I don't know how much to invest in this property. You know, are we going to go business? Are we going to not? Are we going to become a traffic corridor? So I think you're right. We need to address it, but I would not address it now. And I would not address it with these sort of generic terms that aren't defined.
Yeah, I tend to
I mean,
agree.
right,
Well, I think you're opening Pandora's box before we're ready
Yes.
to handle it.
but I think to generalize with economic development, I have a real problem with economic development as a catch-all. And we have industrial development, commercial development, potentially office space. You know, we have a whole bunch of different economic developments, and each one, you know, with a fair amount of planning experience, can be allocated appropriately with due consideration of amenities, transportation, a bunch of other things in different places in a town. And so just to say, where's our center of economic development or economic center, I think is a term that's way too broad. We need to start asking people what elements of economic development they think should be where and why, and what the implications are, you know, with a SWOT analysis. And I think you're correct that this is something that needs to be a charrette. It needs to go start the charrette with a very clear understanding of terminology and a clear understanding of where the current situation is, including where our zoning stands, what is allowed in zoning, what the overlays are in zoning, so that we know where we are before we start talking about where we need to go. Another approach may be throw that all out the door. Let's think with a completely new slate, with all the parameters that are involved in developing a town with a multiple types of economic development. And I think that needs a lot of thought before we go into that. And I've had a number of conversations with Eric, among others, about economic development. And I think we really do confuse our terms because we mean very different things in the same conversation. And we'll have unanticipated results unless we straighten that out.
I agree. And the problem with the economic development people is, I think, Bob, you know this, we've asked them, the EDC, to designate a specific area that they think, which they can't come up with. And, so we, the master planners, are, if it turns out that people want a lot more economic development of a certain type, and we have to, propose places where it could go, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're saying, oh, we plan on taking half the Boy Scout land and half the Slade land and half the Kane land and making a economic zone, or we intend to take 3/5 of the historic district and make it an overlay. Are we going to be that specific? And we better have the data and desire to prove to people that that's what we're talking about. Because the minute you start saying stuff like that, you are affecting property values right now.
I do want to mention that the EDC is sort of looking at the historic center as a mixed use. What did they call it, Valerie? They had a whole write-up on it. A mixed use.
I think it was the mixed use village overlay.
Yeah. That they were going to present to this committee. I kind of threw a wrench in the discussion after I left. I don't know what they, if they
It ended
further
about after you
pursued it.
left. Yeah.
But at this point, this is sort of the direction they're going in.
Well, that's what we are, as a master plan, need to find out from, how much of the town cares about any of these issues, enough so that they would voice their opinion now, and keeping in mind that their opinion now is not the opinion at the town meeting where they would propose such a thing. So, there's a lot of things that have to fall together perfectly for that to happen. And they would need the master plan to mention it and back it up to even have a chance of getting that passed.
I just had a couple of quick practical comments. One is, it sounds like everybody agrees that we want to have a focused future forum on this whole concept, right? Is there anybody that disagrees with that? No. So then my second question is, so then is there anything that we do want to ask at this first forum that can help us plan for that next one? Because I do think we could ask a question, hopefully without opening Pandora's box, that gives us some helpful information to guide the content of the future forum, because we may realize that next forum actually needs to be a lot more, at least education heavy, on defining terms and giving people like common vocabulary. Like there might need to be that part before we get more input. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think you can also ask questions associated with economic development, talking more about what than where. What we've talked about amenities, and there's absolutely no question that
That's in
people are
your
looking for
question.
amenities. But frankly, a lot has changed since Highland Commons appeared. One stop down 495. Since the last time we seriously had this discussion 6 years ago. But I think we can ask those questions now and then get into a detailed discussion. And again, I think your point's absolutely well taken, Brian, that we need to have clear definitions and we need to develop a common language to talk about economic development. What is economic development? What are the components of economic developments? What are the drivers for economic developments, both in terms of taxes, employment, housing, as well as the amenities in the town, while maintaining terribly the character of the town, basically the street view that you witnessed when you first came through town.
So are we gonna take the Bolton Village Center last piece out? So that's gone.
Yeah, I would do that.
Rita?
And what I think you could do is to look at the questions that you had, especially in the economic development section, which had a whole bunch of things there. And you might want to tweak the words to get a little sense
I
of
thought
what
those are
people
great.
are thinking about, but without having a whole station just devoted to the potential controversy of this. There should be some of that data that both Brian and Bob were talking about that would come out of what we've got here.
One question, Valerie. I think you said some will be floaters and some will not be floaters. I mean, obviously you need specific facilitators at certain stations, but I think you're gonna need a body at each station. Even though it seems simple to you, to people who have no clue what they're doing, you're gonna need someone at each station to say, oh, you take the sticker and put it where you live. So you're gonna need a physical body at each station, whether they're facilitators or not.
Yeah, Valerie's aware of that from town meeting.
Okay.
We had to
no,
explain where various people live.
That's a good point.
Because it sounded like you were gonna have some places that no one's gonna be at. And I think that would be a mistake.
I'll take names.
We'll get you.
Okay.
in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do
I
think, following on in this conversation about economic development, I think we need to start thinking very carefully about how to put together a forum on economic development. And I would love to see a forum of education and input on economic development and a subsequently carefully managed, prepared for and facilitated charrette, a real planning charrette, which talks about everything associated with economic development, but on a basic set of terms that everybody understands. But that would be, to me, wonderful for the master plan, maybe beyond the scope of the master plan, but something that we could recommend, but recommending is, implementation is 2 years off realistically. So it might be worthwhile having a semi-charrette as part of this process. And anybody who was involved in the common charrette, and we had fantastic facilitators. We had a fantastic person doing the planning layout. But boy, there was a lot of dialogue, a lot of thinking, and people really did understand the terminology, which we drove into them. It was a prerequisite of the whole thing. Anyway, very important subject.
So what happens next?
Thanks, Brian. 2, 3, 4,
Yeah,
5,
we just
6.
dropped under, Brian. What did he drop under?
No, I said we
Our quorum.
dropped under our quorum.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so that is true.
But we're
That's
not
probably
voting.
what Sasha was trying to
No,
say.
no, even though we don't have a quorum, as long as we don't vote on anything, we can talk.
I think the line is a little bit gray there.
Okay,
we-
next steps.
We need to decide
Well,
what the
it
next steps
doesn't-
are that
we
we're
have
gonna
to
do.
Decide what our next step is and when we're gonna.
Yes, so this has been really helpful. I just want to say that this is
Sorry.
extremely helpful, and it's I really appreciate people's criticisms and comments here because it's helping me learn the town a lot better. So I really appreciate that.
Okay.
The other day I was
Take it as input.
yeah, the other day I was reflecting that town meeting was very simple and which I should be grateful for. But I feel like I missed an opportunity to hear the disgruntled, angry public. And so,
You
so
should have
it's,
come to some other town meetings. We've had them.
yeah, so it's, you know, for me, honestly, any chance I get to have some feedback, it's so valuable. So what I'm going to do is consider the comments I heard tonight and keep working on my mapping skills and my a few other comments that I heard, particularly around transportation and mobility, and think about how to better define some of these housing terms without coding them or making people fearful of them. So got some work to do, but it sounds like we're also going to be working on public outreach and making sure that we can start with those phone calls as early as next week, and get other information out on Facebook and social media.
Valerie, if you can tell me how many facilities you're going to have and how many bodies, a body referring to someone sitting in a booth, I'll find you the bodies.
Yeah, I mean, I think a stretch goal is 10.
Okay.
I'm assuming that there are some here that are also going to be helping me.
Oh, I'm sure we could corral a few.
So in addition to that, yeah,
Oh, you want more and more than 10?
probably.
Okay.
I mean, if we want bodies, I think I had, yeah, it might be a dozen.
Okay. Numbers going up. Okay.
It is.
Valerie, are you going to talk to Ralph in the fairly near future about his?
Yes.
Because I think, you know, I guess I'm beating a dead horse, maybe not, but I think the regional perspective is incredibly valuable. I think we're naive if we don't take advantage of that.
Yes, absolutely. I've one of the questions that he's going to get back to me on is if he's able to bring multiple other colleagues with him. So
Yeah.
Just wondering, you know, what their capacity is right now. Though I know the last time we spoke, he said that, you know, he has some people on staff who are excited to finally get back to an in-person forum. So there might be some interest there. So we'll
Good.
see. Yep.
Great. Yeah, it'd be very sad to discover we're reinventing the wheel or we aren't inventing a wheel at all,
Right.
which is
Right,
worse.
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think any other actions that we need to consider before we time out here? Good.
Been charming.
And since we can't vote, obviously, I can't ask that the meeting
Vote
be
for
adjourned. So
adjourned.
I
let's go
think
on
we can do
forever.
that. I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
I
you
declare
all.
the meeting over.
Thank you all so much.
Night.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Valerie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
That's a
night.
great
Thank
job.
you.
I mean,
Yeah,
talk about
good
leading the
job.
operation. You've done a tremendous job.
Thank you. Have a good night, you all.
Good night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.